It wasn't the empty box that rattled me. It was how long it took me to notice. I'd opened the drawer to find my cufflinks. My fingers brushed velvet and instinct reached for the ring out of habit, but the box was light, hollow. Elaine's ring was gone. I stared at the spot where it used to rest, cradled like it still had her hand inside it. The silver edges worn soft from years, the tiny emerald still faintly green, like the first spring after we buried her. I walked down the hallway, footsteps louder than they needed to be. Anna was in the kitchen sipping coffee over her tablet, barefoot, relaxed. "Did you move Mom's ring?" I asked. She didn't even look up. "Yeah, I took it for safekeeping." I blinked, without telling me. She shrugged. "You forget things lately, Dad. I didn't want it to get lost." I didn't forget that it was there. She met my eyes then, something smug behind the sympathy. "It's just a ring," she said. "You've got drawers full of old stuff. Don't start getting weird about it." My jaw tightened. I kept my voice steady. It wasn't just a ring. She stood, dumped the rest of her coffee in the sink, and walked past me. "You're being dramatic," she muttered. "I'll bring it back later." She didn't ask why I kept it in the box. She didn't ask how often I opened it just to feel close to Elaine. She didn't even pretend to care. That night I sat at the kitchen table alone, same spot I'd sat the night Elaine went into hospice. I hadn't eaten. Couldn't. I just stared at my hands, old, veined, bare. That ring wasn't an object. It was a promise. Elaine had slipped it off before the surgery and pressed it into my palm. "Don't give this away," she'd whispered. "Not until you know they deserve it." I kept that vow like a sacred thing. Through grief, through birthdays, through the silence of holidays that used to be loud. Now it was gone. Taken by someone who said they were protecting me, while stealing something I'd protected longer than she'd been married. I leaned back in the chair, bones aching. The silence of the house wrapped around me like fog. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did. I trusted she understood the weight of what that ring meant. I believed her kindness outweighed her convenience. But that night, I learned something that settled in the pit of me like a stone. She hadn't taken it for safekeeping. She took it because she thought it was already hers. "Safekeeping," I whispered into the dark. Then I asked the question I didn't want to answer. "Whose?" She didn't even pause to think. That's what struck me. "I'll get it back tomorrow," Anna said, waving one hand like she was swatting at a fly. "It's with the appraiser. I'm getting it insured." I watched her eyes, not her mouth. Her eyes darted to the floor, then back to the screen in her hand. Too smooth, too fast. "You never mentioned anything about insurance," I said slowly. She shrugged. "You've been forgetful lately. I didn't want to worry you with the details." That word again, forgetful. The way she used it like a curtain to hide behind. Not concern, not care. Just a way to rewrite what happened so she didn't have to answer for it. I wanted to believe her. God help me, I did. But after she left, I stood at the kitchen counter staring at my phone, debating whether to press the call button. I still had the number from when Elaine got her necklace appraised years ago, same local place, 2 streets over. Same woman, Janice. I finally called. "Appraisal Center," came the voice. It was Janice. "This is Walter Holloway," I said. "My daughter may have dropped off a silver wedding ring last week. Emerald in the center, carved inside with the initials EMH. Janice was quiet for a beat. "No, sir, I'd remember that. We haven't had anything like that in months." I swallowed. "Are you sure?" "Positive. That sounds beautiful. I hope you find it." I thanked her and hung up. My hand didn't leave the phone. I stared at it like maybe, if I waited long enough, the truth would shift, rewrite itself. Maybe Janice would call back and say she made a mistake. Maybe the box upstairs wasn't empty after all. Maybe I was forgetful. But I knew better. I walked slowly to the living room, each step heavier than the last. The air felt thicker somehow, like it was trying to hold me still. Elaine's armchair sat by the window just as it always had. I eased myself down into it. The cushion still curved to her shape. That ring was more than metal. It was more than stone. It was the last thing she touched before she left this world. And now it was gone. Not misplaced, not lost. Sold. Traded for cash by the daughter we raised together. The child Elaine once rocked in this very chair while humming lullabies and reading stories about right and wrong. The silence in the room changed. It wasn't just absence anymore. It was betrayal. And it hummed through the air like a cold draft. I looked down at my empty hands again, the same hands that held Elaine through everything. They trembled now not from age, but from the weight of what I knew. She lied. And she didn't even blink. The pawn shop sat 2 blocks off Main, tucked behind a shuttered diner and a bar with no windows. I parked and sat in the car for a moment, letting the engine idle while I stared at the neon sign buzzing faintly against the morning light. Buy-sell trade. It pulsed like a wound that wouldn't heal. Helen had helped me get access to Anna's recent credit activity, legal, above board, part of our quiet inquiry. One payment caught my eye, a small transaction at this place dated just 5 days ago. I stepped inside, and the bell above the door gave a dull jingle. The air smelled like old receipts and colder regrets. A man behind the counter barely looked up. "I'm looking for a silver wedding ring," I said. "Emerald center. Scripted engraving inside reads, 'Eternity isn't time, it's loyalty.'" He blinked, then turned to a tray behind the glass. "Got one that matches. Came in last week. Young woman, maybe 30s, paid her in cash." He handed it to me in a velvet pouch. My fingers shook slightly as I opened it. And there it was, the ring Elaine wore through surgeries, storms, the loss of her parents, and the quiet Sunday morning she loved most. I turned it in my hand. The engraving was there, worn just enough to tell me it had lived a life. Our life. I paid whatever he asked. I didn't even hear the number. On the drive home, I rested the ring on the passenger seat. I didn't speak. I didn't cry. I just listened to the sound of the tires and the thrum in my chest, not anger, not yet. Just the realization that something sacred had been handled like scrap metal. Anna was in the kitchen when I walked in, pouring herself coffee like nothing had changed. "I stopped by the pawn shop," I said. She froze, but only for a breath. "You're welcome, I guess," she said, not turning. It was collecting dust. "You lied," I said quietly. "You said it was at the appraiser." She turned then, eyes wide with mock innocence. "Dad, honestly, you make such a fuss. You weren't even wearing it. What was I supposed to do? Let it sit there while you forget where you left it?" My jaw tightened. That ring wasn't just a ring, it was her. Anna rolled her eyes. "It's a piece of jewelry, not a holy relic." "No," I said, placing it gently on the table between us. "It's a promise, one she made, one I kept, and one you broke." She didn't answer. I picked up the ring, walked out of the kitchen, and left her standing in the silence she created. She hadn't taken it out of desperation. She'd taken it because she believed she deserved it. And pride is a dangerous thief. The clink of ceramic cups and the low murmur of strangers filled the roadside diner like a blanket. I stirred the sugar into my coffee slowly, watching it swirl into quiet submission. I hadn't planned to stop here, but the ache in my chest needed something warm, something still. That's when I heard a voice I hadn't expected in years. "Mr. Holloway." I turned. Evan. Older, thinner. His hair was more salt than pepper now, and the lines around his eyes told a quieter story than the one I'd heard during the divorce. But the way he looked at me, gentle, unsure, hadn't changed. "I wasn't sure it was you," he said, shifting awkwardly. "Sit," I said, "please." He did. For a few moments, we just sipped in silence. I heard about Elaine, he said finally. She was a good woman. She was, I murmured, thank you. We talked about nothing at first, the weather, the highway construction. Then it drifted naturally to Anna. She always had sharp edges, he said, setting his cup down. But I never thought she'd cut me that deep. I looked at him. She hurt you. He gave a tired laugh. Drained our joint account 2 days before walking out. Claimed I authorized it. Bank didn't question it. She forged the signature well enough. Even took a payout I got when my mother passed. Said we'd split it, then filed for separation the next week. I felt my hands curl slightly around the coffee mug. Why didn't you press charges? I didn't have the stomach, he said, shrugging. Didn't want a war. I thought if I let her go, maybe she'd be kinder to the next person. Was she? I asked. He gave me a look that said everything. I studied him then, this man my daughter had buried financially, emotionally, maybe even spiritually. And yet here he was, still soft-spoken, still decent. She ever say why she left you? I asked. He chuckled without humor, said I didn't dream big enough. Translation, I didn't spend big enough. The silence between us stretched, not awkward, just honest. I always liked you, Evan, I said. You treated people with care, even when they didn't deserve it. He blinked, caught off guard. Thank you, sir, that means more than you know. When he left, he clapped my shoulder lightly and said, take care of yourself. I watched him walk to his truck, old, dented, still running, just like him. Back at my booth, I reached for my wallet to pay and found Elaine's ring in the inside pocket. I traced the engraving with my thumb. Revenge doesn't need fire, I thought. It needs patience. It needs memory. It needs to aim at the right silence and break it clean. Evan gave me something Anna never could. Perspective. Elaine always handled the legal folders. Even when we were young, she'd smooth the corners, label things in her careful script, color-coded tabs on everything. I used to tease her for it. Now, sitting in Helen's office with those same types of folders stacked between us, I missed her hands more than ever. Helen looked up from the papers, eyes sharp but kind. You said this is about the ring, but it's not just the ring, is it? I shook my head. It's about being erased, bit by bit. I ask a question and I'm treated like I've forgotten my own name. She patted my hand, Helen, like I was a child. She's not the only one who's done that to you, Helen said gently. No, I admitted. But she's the only one who took Elaine's ring, lied about it, and tried to gaslight me about memory while doing it. Helen tapped her pen against the legal pad, then sat back. You can't change people, but you can change paperwork. I raised an eyebrow. She slid a file toward me. You still have full authority over the estate. No medical diagnosis, no power of attorney changes. You're competent and we can prove it. If you want to amend the will, we can. I want her removed. Helen didn't flinch. Then let's make it clean. We spent the next hour combing through clauses. There was a scholarship fund Elaine used to mention, something for underprivileged students who aged out of foster care. She had helped set up the early grant language with Helen years ago. Forgotten paperwork, buried dreams. What if, I said, we brought that fund back in Elaine's name? Helen paused. I like that. I want Evan to manage it. She blinked. Evan, her ex. I nodded. He has more integrity in the way he says thank you than Anna's shown in a year. Helen looked at me for a long moment, then said, he handled some of Elaine's charity outreach, didn't he? Yes, she trusted him. That's enough for me. We worked in silence after that. The rhythm of keys, the shuffle of paper. I initialed every change, signed where she told me, her voice calm, steady, like a lighthouse calling me through fog. When it was done, she stood and offered her hand. You're not doing this out of spite, she said. No, I replied. I'm doing it out of memory. Elaine left me more than things. She left me standards. As I left her office, I passed a mirror in the hallway. For the first time in months, I didn't look small, or confused, or erased. I looked like a man returning to himself, one signature at a time. She hadn't invited me to dinner in over a year. That alone should have tipped me off. But I went. Wore the sweater Elaine had knit me 2 winters before she passed. It still smelled faintly of her perfume. That scent held me together when my hands shook stepping onto Anna's porch. The house was pristine. Cold, though. Like everything had been polished for someone else's benefit. Anna opened the door with an exaggerated smile, arms outstretched. "Dad, I'm glad you came." I nodded. "You sounded sincere." She laughed too quickly. "Of course I am, we're family." We sat down to a table that probably cost more than my first car. Her new husband, a man who always called me sir, with a smirk, raised his glass before sitting. "To new beginnings," he said. I didn't drink. Dinner was fine. Empty compliments. Hollow updates about remodeling their second home. I stirred my mashed potatoes and thought about how Elaine used to hum while peeling carrots, how she always kissed my shoulder before sitting down. "Dessert," Anna chirped, standing with a little flourish. When she returned, she wore something new, a diamond necklace. It gleamed too brightly, too clean, too loud. "Lovely," I said, tone flat. She touched it proudly. "It's an upgrade, obviously. Not all old jewelry needs to be kept, right?" She looked at me when she said it. "Right," I murmured, my fingers tightening around the envelope in my lap. Over dessert, some elaborate confection I didn't recognize, she leaned in, lowering her voice as if to confide something tender. "Dad," she said, "when you go, I just want you to know your things will be safe with me." That word again, safe. I smiled faintly, slid the envelope across the linen tablecloth. "What's this?" she asked, already losing the rhythm of her smirk. "Peace of mind," I said. She opened it casually, until her eyes hit the top line, amendment to the last will and testament of Harold L. Fletcher. The smile didn't fade instantly. It stuttered, twitched, then slowly collapsed. She scanned it again. The charity clause, the removal of her name, Evan's appointment as trustee. This isn't real." I leaned back. "It's notarized, witnessed, filed. So yes, Anna, it is very real." "You're cutting me out, after everything I've done." I raised my brows. "You mean the ring, the gaslighting, the necklace paid for in pawnshop cash?" Her husband suddenly found great interest in his spoon. "I brought you here to reconnect," she snapped. "No," I said, rising. "You brought me here to secure your future." As I turned to leave, the candle between us flickered, dipped once, then out. Her face, in the sudden dim, looked exactly how I felt when I saw the empty velvet box. Not surprised. Just cold. Some moments don't need anger, just a little light. That's what Helen said when she pitched the idea. A quiet article, she promised. No attacks, just truth. Let the truth do the heavy lifting. I wasn't looking to humiliate Anna. I just wanted Elaine's name remembered for what she gave, not what was taken. So I agreed. The journalist met us at the community center on a gray Tuesday. Evan stood beside me, awkward but steady. He hadn't expected to be included, let alone made the steward of Elaine's legacy. "You're sure about this?" he asked me. I looked at the kids filing into the reading room, jackets too big, shoes too thin. Elaine was sure. "I'm just following through." The reporter asked questions gently. About Elaine, her dream of a library, how she once donated her engagement ring's appraisal value to fund school supplies. I told them about her volunteer work, her belief in second chances. About the ring, not the theft, just the symbolism. Eternity isn't time, it's loyalty. They photographed Evan and me under a banner that read, "The Elaine Gardner Foundation for Learning." I wore the same sweater from the dinner. It felt right. The article ran 3 days later. Front page of the Sunday Local. Black and white photo, headline in bold. A father honors his late wife through education fund, managed by her former son-in-law. Donations came in fast. Not just money, handwritten letters, old photos of Elaine at bake sales and book drives, memories from people she helped in ways I'd forgotten. One child, now grown, wrote, "She taught me to read under a tree. That changed my life." But what struck hardest came silently, a text message, no punctuation, no greeting. "How could you do this?" It was from Anna. I imagined her seeing the paper, the photo, Evan in a clean shirt smiling just enough, my hand on his shoulder, not hers, never again hers. I stared at the text for a long moment, then typed 2 words. Very easily. I didn't hit send right away. I thought of the years, birthdays, holidays, the slow shift in her tone, when love turned conditional, when I stopped recognizing the girl Elaine used to cradle against her chest. Then I sent it. I turned off the phone and set it face down. Outside it started to rain, not heavy, just steady enough to tap the windows. I watched the drops slide down the glass, thinking how soft revenge can be when it's wrapped in purpose. That afternoon, I visited the library again. Evan was there, reading aloud to a little boy on a beanbag. In the corner, a framed copy of the article sat on the shelf, beside a vase of fresh lilies. Elaine's favorites. She knocked like the world owed her something. 3 sharp raps. I opened the door to find Anna standing there, rain still clinging to her hair, mascara blurred like it had melted under heat instead of tears. "You humiliated me," she said before I could even offer a greeting. "You replaced me with him." I stepped aside, coffee. She hesitated, then walked in like the walls still recognized her. They didn't. In the kitchen, the kettle hissed as I spooned in grounds. Silence stretched, long and thin. She didn't sit, just stood, arms crossed, eyes darting like a child rehearsing a speech they didn't believe in. "You really think Evan deserves this?" she snapped, "after what he did to me?" I turned, holding the mug out to her. "He didn't sell your mother's wedding ring for a necklace." She flinched but didn't take the cup. I set it on the counter between us. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, voice low now like regret had just joined the room. "I just thought." "No," I said, cutting her off gently. "You didn't think, or maybe you did and that's worse." Her lip trembled just slightly. "You gave everything to him, not even to me. I'm your daughter." "That's why it hurts," I said, leaning against the counter. "Because I was your father when you took that ring, and I was still your father when you looked me in the eyes and lied about it." She stared at the mug, not me. "You don't know what it's like," she said, swallowing hard, "to feel like you're never enough." I almost laughed. "Anna, I wasn't asking for perfection, just honesty, maybe love if there was any left." Her arms dropped to her sides. "Do you hate me?" I looked at her then, really looked. She looked smaller somehow, as if guilt had trimmed her height. Elaine's eyes, my stubborn chin. "No," I said. "I don't hate you. Hate takes effort. I stopped putting effort into us the day you pawned your mother's memory for a receipt." She wiped her nose with the sleeve of her coat. Her hands trembled. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I didn't answer. Some words arrived too late for echo. She turned without another word and walked toward the door. I didn't follow. The door clicked shut behind her, soft and final. I poured myself the coffee she wouldn't drink and walked to the window. I didn't look out, just stood there, listening to the hollow sound of shoes walking away across wet pavement. The house was quiet again, but not empty. Just corrected. The folding chair beneath me creaked as I shifted, adjusting the cuffs of my jacket. I hadn't worn a tie in months. It felt strange, stiff around the throat, but right. The auditorium smelled like new carpet and nervous energy. Rows of students, parents, faculty, all waiting. Evan stood behind the podium, a sheet of notes in his hand he never looked at once. His voice was calm, steady, stronger than I remembered. When Elaine Marshall organized her first book drive, he began, she didn't do it for recognition. She did it because she believed in the quiet power of literacy, the kind that doesn't just educate but dignifies. I folded my hands in my lap. My knuckles looked older today. She once told me, he continued, hope doesn't always knock. Sometimes you have to leave the door open. This scholarship, this legacy, is her open door. There was a stillness in the room, a respectful silence, like something sacred had been spoken out loud. I closed my eyes for a moment. I could almost feel Elaine's fingers brushing my shoulder like they used to when I stood too rigid in formal settings. I let my breath ease. Evan gestured toward the three students seated near the stage, young, bright-eyed, wearing nervous smiles. One of them clutched a book like it was armor. I recognized the title, Elaine's favorite, To Light a Candle in the Dark. She lit candles, Evan said, voice softer now, not for herself but so others could see. I swallowed hard. The ache in my chest wasn't grief. Not exactly, it was something gentler, something earned. Cameras flashed. Applause broke out in waves. A local reporter scribbled in a notepad. Somewhere in the back, a news crew adjusted their lens. None of it mattered. What mattered was that Elaine's name echoed, not just in marble or print, but in the stories those kids would carry forward. Not a statue, a ripple. As the clapping slowed, I glanced around the room. Anna wasn't there. I hadn't expected her to be, but part of me, the father part, had held onto a foolish thread. That she might sit in the back, hidden. That she might clap when no one was watching. That she might care. But her seat was empty. And somehow, that absence spoke louder than any standing ovation. After the ceremony, Evan found me by the exit. He didn't speak right away, just extended his hand. I shook it. She would have been proud, he said. I know, I replied. Outside, dusk had settled. The sky was the same color as Elaine's favorite scarf, the one Anna never returned. I didn't mind. Let her keep it. Let her remember what warmth felt like. I turned my collar up and walked toward the parking lot. Behind me, laughter and light poured out of the auditorium like something alive. Ahead, the quiet waited, not empty, just peaceful. The package arrived on a quiet Tuesday. No knock, no call, just a plain brown envelope on the welcome mat, heavy enough to feel like it carried weight. I carried it inside, set it on the kitchen table, and stared at it. No return address, no hint of who had sent it. I peeled back the paper carefully, letting the folds fall away like a curtain, revealing something sacred. Inside lay the ring. Polished, glinting under the morning light, emerald catching a streak of sun from the window. No note, no explanation, no apology, just the ring. I lifted it slowly, turning it over in my fingers. Every groove, every imperfection, every tiny nick from decades of wear, all there. It smelled faintly of Elaine's perfume, or maybe it was memory pressing through the metal. I slipped it on my finger. It fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting, as if it had never left. Outside, the wind caught the scholarship banner again, the Elaine Gardner Foundation for Learning. The gold letters shimmered, alive. Children's laughter reached me through the screen of the kitchen window, carrying their small victories, reading aloud, spelling, learning. I closed my eyes and felt the warmth of their voices settle in my chest. For years, that warmth had been absent. The house had been quiet, Anna's absence a dull echo in every room. The betrayal, the lies, the ring stolen, all of it had made me cold, distant, half a man trying to find the shape of his own hands. Now, with the ring back, I felt the warmth return, not just in my fingers, in my heart. I whispered softly, almost to myself, "It's safe now." No one needed to hear it. The truth was enough. Elaine's legacy had been protected, her memory honored. Her values, patience, integrity, generosity, had survived the greed that had tried to consume them. I held the ring against the light one more time. The emerald sparkled, the metal reflected the sun, and for the first time in years my hand felt alive, real, whole. I set the ring on the table briefly, tracing the engraved words with my thumb. Eternity isn't time, it's loyalty. I remembered the day Elaine pressed it into my palm before her surgery, her soft voice trembling just slightly, her eyes wide with trust, her belief that love, memory, and honor were worth guarding, even against those closest to us. I took a deep breath and slipped it back onto my finger. The wind carried a soft rustle outside. The banner moved gently, gold letters dancing, and in that movement I felt the pulse of everything Elaine had taught me. The house was no longer just a building, it was home, safe, resilient. I looked down at my hand and finally smiled. I wasn't a man who lost. I wasn't a man who failed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a charity case. I was the man I had always been. And the promise I kept for Elaine, for the children, for the truth, had returned to me in full.